Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Bob Howard's Victory Grill, just off the campus here at the University of Alabama. I'm Eli Gold. Jim Dunaway from WJOX Radio in Birmingham, host of the Roundtable Monday through Friday morning from 6 until 10. He is alongside, and of course, as the ovation in the background would indicate, Coach Nick Saban making his way into the restaurant. Jim, good to see you, sir. How are you?
Nice seeing you, Eli. Excited for another big Alabama football weekend.
Exactly. Everybody flying out tomorrow to Fayetteville, Arkansas. An 11 o'clock kick on Saturday. Our coverage begins at 8 o'clock in the morning. And for those of you listening on our affiliates out in Hawaii, we'll be on the air at 3 o'clock in the morning out there in Honolulu. So I hope you can tune in. Coach Nick Saban, good to see you, sir. How are you?
Good to see you, Eli.
And you know, Jim,
Coach. How you doing, buddy?
Nice seeing you again.
Unfinished business from the first half hour of the show. We had Jay Sewell with us as our guest. Of course, his men are now number 3 in the country, coming off a top 2 finish last year. I know he's been working with you on your golf game. How is he in coaching other than the collegians?
I think he's a great coach. I don't think I'm very coachable because I'm sure not making the improvement I'd like to make, that's for sure. But golf's a hard game. But I think a game that probably, when you engage in golf, there's a lot of different things that you have to do, but it's probably as much a metaphor of life as any sport, because the next shot is always the most important thing. No matter where you hit the last shot, you could hit it right down the middle, but the next shot you could hit in the water.
Yep.
Or you could hit it in the woods, and the next shot you could hit on the green. All right, so you always got to focus, and you always got to look forward. You know, you can never look back. It's always about next shot, next play, which is what we try to get our players to understand about football. But sometimes in team sports, you know, people want to relax. You know, we get ahead a little bit, let's relax, take a couple plays off. You can't really do that in golf because one shot can ruin the whole game for you.
Exactly. Well, I got the water and the woods part down just fine. It's the rest of it I'm struggling with. Jim, why don't you jump in with the coach? Let's get going.
While you're talking golf, what did you think of Justin Thomas, the Alabama great, over at the Ryder Cup with the American team this past weekend, and maybe your greatest shot of all time, if you've got one that pops to mind?
Well, I was really proud that Justin was, the one person who really had success in the Ryder Cup. I think he won four matches,
right.
4 points, and out of 5, which is really, really good. But I think it was really important to Justin. He invested some time. He went over there and played the course once in a tournament, so he really knew what it was like. I don't think any of our other guys really did that. So it certainly paid off for him. It didn't pay off for our team, but it certainly paid off for him. And he really is a great ambassador for this university. He was here for 2 years, did a great job with our golf team, won a national championship here, but he loves it here, comes back all the time, and, he's my partner when we play.
There you go. To show you how nice a guy I am, as a Yankees fan, I don't normally talk to folks who wear Chicago Cubs hats, but we'll make an exception tonight. There's a young man who has stepped up to speak with you, Coach. Good evening, sir. How are you?
Hi. What did your team learn most from their first SEC road trip game that you would hope will translate into the game this weekend in Arkansas?
Well, I think the big focus for our team is the goal is to always get better. And if you're going to get better, you have to want it more. Do we want it more than, say, the other teams that want it more? And Arkansas wants to beat us, no doubt, but I'm sure that Georgia and Auburn and all the other schools in our conference, they want to be a championship team too. So we have to learn how to always play to a higher standard, a standard of excellence that's going to get us better, all right, so that we can play with more discipline, more toughness, a better job of executing on a more consistent basis, whether it's blocking, tackling, just the basic fundamentals things. And to do that, you have to push yourself. If you want to be a championship team, you constantly have to push yourself. If you get satisfied and you relax, you start doing things, kind of half-cocked, not very well, not paying attention to detail, and you don't get better. And then sometimes those habits show up on the field. So the challenge for our players is how much do you want it? What are you willing to do to make the choices and decisions you have to do to make to be a championship team? And obviously we've done okay so far, but it's one play at a time all the way through, and what are you willing to do in your preparation, how you work each week, how you prepare yourself so that we can become a championship team. And if that's the case, then how much does it matter who you're really playing? Because then it becomes about you being the best that you can be. All right, so the other guy doesn't matter so much anymore because you're not really determining your performance based on him, it's on you. And we have a lot of things that we can improve on, and hopefully, our players will continue to work hard and push themselves so that we can improve. And, I think Arkansas is playing a lot better than they played earlier in the year, and I'm sure we'll have to change the way that they think by the way we play, especially the start.
Question, and this is not about Arkansas, it's about first-year coaches in general. What is Chad Morris dealing with when you took over here or at LSU or with the Dolphins? What goes on in that first year for a head coach as you try and put your fingerprints on an organization?
Well, I think the big thing is I'm sure that the coaches that were at Arkansas before did a really good job with their players, so sure. I don't want you to think that I'm being critical in any way of what they did. But every coach has a philosophy. Everybody in the organization has to buy into that, the principles and values of the organization, so that you have a chance to be successful as a team. And when you inherit a team of guys that you didn't really bring in, you're going to have some of those guys that have a little more difficult time buying in because they really bought into somebody else's program. And your program may be a little bit different philosophically in terms of the offense that you run, the defense that you play, even sort of the discipline that you try to instill in how players do things. So, sure. I think it takes time to get everybody to buy in, and I think that's why Arkansas has really made a lot of improvements so far this year, because I think, I see more and more players that are probably buying in. They're playing with a lot of toughness, and their defense is playing a lot better. So I see signs of, people kind of buying into that.
You're right. The deeper into the season they're going, the better they're looking. Coach, it's time to bring the man on. Pee Wee is joining us from Grand Bay, Alabama, as our first caller of the week. And, of course, each week, Alabama 811 brings us the first phone call. Always contact 811 before you dig to know what's below. Call 811 or visit al811.com. Pee Wee, how are you tonight, sir?
Doing well. Coach, how are you, sir?
Doing good, Pee Wee. How are you?
I'm doing well, Coach. I'm going to step out of line here just a little bit and go in a different direction and ask a different type of question.
Oh, Lord.
You have been a proponent of the SEC playing 9 or 10 conference games for some time now, and then also about the schools playing that are in the Power 5 playing just Power 5 teams for their schedule. As far as the SEC is concerned, what exactly would have to happen for that to be enacted? Is it just up to the ADs and the presidents, or do you as coaches, do y'all get input and votes in this? Exactly what would it take to change the number of games that the SEC plays every year?
Well, I think the number of SEC games we played is strictly an SEC question. I mean, this discussion has come up before. The ADs, the presidents, all sort of vote on what they think is best. I think the commissioner probably has a lot of input in that. But 9 games, going from 8 to 9 games, which would be ideal, is a little cumbersome because you can't, how do you get the home and homes right, sure, and all that kind of stuff. But I think everybody sort of wanted to keep the format we had before we expanded the league, where you were always playing a fixed opponent and 2 from the other side, so that you played everybody in 3.5 years. You played every team as they rotated on and off. So almost every player on your team got to play against every SEC team at some point in their career. We have guys that have never played Florida before.
Sure.
All right, and they won't get the opportunity to do that. So to do that, you have to get to 9 games. Well, it doesn't work very well schedule-wise. Now you talk about 10 games. Now you only got 2 other games to play. And I think people get very, very concerned about how are we going to qualify for bowl games. And I've talked about this before. You got to do it like basketball. They pick 68 teams for the basketball tournament. It's not based on your record. It's not based on anything other than somebody rates the teams. based on your strength of schedule and who you beat and Power 5 wins or whatever. And then those teams get to go to a bowl game, regardless of what their record is. Then people would be more willing to play a better schedule, all right, which would be more appealing to the fans. So, and I think that's something that we all need to consider. I mean, look at our stadium. This was the smallest crowd in how many years have I been here? Is this the 11th or 12th? 12th. Okay, 12th year we've been here. This is the smallest crowd we ever had at a game. I don't really care who we're playing. It doesn't matter. I mean, our players work just as hard to play well in that game, all right, as any game that we play all season long. Our students don't even come to the game. I know I went off on that yesterday in the press conference, but half the student section is actually empty. And, you know, I mean, that's not really fair to our players, I mean, who work hard. They've got a lot of pride in performance. We have a great brand here at Alabama. People have an expectation of what they're going to see when they come to an Alabama game. And when players and people that we recruit come and visit, they have an expectation for what they're going to see too. And I don't think it's to see, you know, half the student section empty.
You should come see Alabama, not the opposition.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Just like we want our players to compete to a standard, win a championship, play to that standard, not to who you're playing against. And that's what we ask our players to do. So, but anyway, I think all these things are important in the spirit. But if we didn't play schools like that, maybe people wouldn't have an excuse not to come to the game. I guess is the point that I was trying to make. And if we had a better schedule and had a better show, and it was more entertaining and more enjoyable for people to come to the games, then they would come to the games. But, you know, my question is are we not having enough success? Is that why you don't come to the games? We don't win enough games?
No, that's
I can't get
I
I can't get the one line in the fight zone. And the players are on me for the last 10 years. You know, the one in the middle that you have to say real fast. I just can't get it. I mean, I even know the words, and I can't get them out. So I tell the players, well, if we'd win more, maybe I'd learn how to say
Written her
it.
name in Crimson Flame.
Yeah. I'd learn how to do that if we win more games.
There you go. I bet you'll get it down, no doubt. Jim, why don't you jump in?
I've always loved your note-taking, and it even popped up on Rolling with the Tide. I saw you watching Kobe Bryant taking notes. Do you save the notes, the handwritten notes? Is there somewhere at home that Miss Terry has to put up with that you've saved those notes, and do they come out over time at different times? Like you'll go back to a note you wrote in 2009 and bring it up and use it at a practice or a game?
Well, I use the scratch pad. I'm not like everybody else who gets on the internet and has all their stuff organized and all that. I don't have any of that. All right, so I put a little red folder just full of things that you tear out of a deal, and I put them in there, and it's all my information. And sometimes I look through it to get ideas about, you know, things to talk about to the players. And I remember somebody said something about a certain point, and I'll go back and look at it and read it. Do the same thing with books. I, you know, just circle things and remember things. So I'm always trying to learn, you know, how can we inspire the people that were around us to, you know, sort of be the best version of themselves. And, you know, you know, one of the things that, you know, sort of get me a little bit is we're kind of getting to where we live in a little bit of an entitlement kind of society. And, you know, when I say when we have players that feel entitled, they feel inherently deserving, like we owe them. And they're more worried about their rights than their responsibilities. All right? And that's not always the best way to perform well.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Now, you know, the opposite of that is ownership. You know, you own what you do. You own and take responsibility for doing what you're supposed to do at a high level to a standard. And, you know, players come in and say, oh, why not I'm playing? I say, well, why don't you go out there and do things so I don't have any choice but to play you? I mean, I want to play the best players. Sure. And you think I don't like you and I like somebody else. I like performance. I like people who perform well with consistency and do the right things and make good choices and decisions and don't feel like they're entitled to anything.
Yep.
I mean, because you really have to earn it in the end. So anyway, that's my speech on that. But
That is Coach Nick Saban. Jim Dunaway is with us in WJOX. We're going to break away, take care of some business, and we'll come right back. More of your questions for the coach. The Nick Saban Show. 35. A straight-on kick this time, albeit end under end. Waddle makes the grab, avoids a couple of men, goes to the far side. Oh, Bama laying him out with blocks. Down the right sideline, Waddle. Waddle to the 25, cuts inside to the 20. He'll outrace the defense, coming back to the near side. All the way in. Touchdown, 62 yards. Jalen Waddle. Touchdown, Alabama. Turned out to be 63 yards. Of course, math never my strong suit, but that was a beautiful run back. And did you hear me say in the middle? I said, oh, he lays him out. And I'll mention that to the coach as he joins us back here. Everybody zeroes in on Jalen Waddle and that return at one point in the middle of the run back. I said, oh, Bama's laying him out all over the place. There was some major league blocking going on to help Mr. Waddle.
Well, there was, and, people love those great, sort of blindside hits, but, we had to do some coaching because those are the very hits now that when you hit an unprotected player like that, you better see what you hit, because if you use your head or lead with your head at all or hit them in the head at all, that's a potential ejection for a player. So those were great hits and great effort on the play, and but, there was also some coaching points that we can use and hopefully don't have those issues in the future.
There's always coaching points, aren't there?
Yeah, pretty much so. I mean, there's good things that you like to reinforce, so that other people can learn from it. But when you point out mistakes and errors on how to do things correctly, but I think the more technical you stay with players in terms of how they're supposed to do what they do, they respond the best. And
sure.
I think that's, but you got to provide that players are doing the intangible things the way they want in terms of mental intensity, toughness, effort, those kind of things, because when you're coaching that, you're not really coaching them how to do what they need to do.
Yeah, I hear you. Jim, go ahead again.
You coached me 11 years ago not to ask you a hypothetical question, but I'm going to risk it here, sort of, because I was thinking about your granddaughter when I was running earlier today. 20 years from now, she comes to you, and you can use Javier Arenas or any of the players who come back and ask you the same question. She comes to you and she says, I want to be a coach. I want to be a coach. First thing you say to her or to any of your players that come back and say, I want to be a coach, what's the first piece of advice you give them?
Well, I think it's a great thing to be a coach, and I'm happy when they say that, and I would be happy if my granddaughter wanted to be a coach. I think that, coaching is a great, you have a great opportunity to make a positive impact on people as long as you keep it in perspective to helping them be more successful in life. You use the lessons that the competitive circumstances that happen in any sport give you the opportunity to learn to use those things in your life. And the key to the drill is whatever you're coaching, the players that are playing it, they really like it and want to do well. So you kind of got something on them, like all our players want to play.
Right.
All right.
Sure.
So if I want to get a guy to go to class, all I got to say is, you're not playing unless you start going to class.
You got something they want.
You got something they want. So you can affect them in other ways to help them do the right things, make the right choices and decisions that are going to enhance the quality of their success in the future in other areas, even in the sport that they're playing. So, I have a great admiration, respect, appreciation for, people who are in our profession who still keep those values. Like I always think Coach Stallings had those values. I mean, you can't ever go anywhere and meet any of Coach Bryant's players and they'll tell you stories that impacted their life in a positive way and helped them be more successful because of it. And, that's really what we want for our players here. And we want them to have a better chance to be successful in life because they were involved in the program. So what they do personally in terms of their choices and decisions academically and creating a career off the field, and how they develop as football players, all these intangible things that they do can really help them be successful. So I would be pleased, if I'm always pleased when the players want to be coaches.
Right.
That means they had a good experience with the coaching they got while they were here.
Sure.
And I would really be pleased if my granddaughter wanted to be a coach. Now, I would not go out and coach her up or encourage her. But if she wanted to be, I'd be really happy about it.
Cool. Coach, a visitor here wearing his Crimson Tide shirt and the college football playoff hat. He's all set to go.
Coach, you've talked about the redshirt rule till enough. But off of that, how much input do coaches have on significant rule changes like that with the NCAA, especially ones that can really impact your program with unintended consequences like you've talked about?
Well, I think that's one of the issues in the NCAA, and I think everybody at the NCAA has great intentions about, the things that they're trying to do to enhance the betterment of all of our games, whether it's football or other sports or Olympic sports or whatever. But I do think there's a lot of people in these positions who make decisions who really haven't ever coached or never had boots on the ground in the situation that they're trying to make a decision about. So therefore, they don't understand a lot of the unintended consequences that occur when they make a rule. Just like this rule, I think the intention of this, and we may have talked about this last week, was that you could have a freshman play in 4 games and still get redshirted. That was the whole intention, to enhance a young player's development. Now, it's turned out to be completely different, than that. We have players internally who, when they play in 4 games, they want to save their year. I'm not starting, so I'd like to get redshirted so I can play another year. But, this is a pretty definitive test of where a guy's heart is, too. I mean, we recruited guys to come to Alabama because they wanted to come to Alabama. We wanted them to come to Alabama, but we never know what's in their heart. But really, they didn't commit to Alabama when they came here. They didn't commit to me. They committed to everybody in the organization and all their teammates. So when they sit in that team room and they decide they don't want to play, they're telling every guy that's on the team that I'm not committed to you. I'm not committed to doing what you do. I'm not committed to what we're all supposed to be doing together. I'm putting my future, what I want to do ahead of what we're all committed to. But to me, I looked at like that's a definitive test. Maybe we shouldn't be playing that guy. Pretty definitive test, right? To find out about where a guy's heart is. So we found out about a few.
Coach, following up on that with a question from the Nick Saban Show blog, Joseph in Murfreesboro, Tennessee says, hey, you've played 5 games so far, and you've played so many people in each and every game. The regulars were gone early. I dare say that is an invaluable opportunity for these young men to learn the game, correct?
It is, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, look, the biggest thing to get guys to learn how to do, and the hardest thing to do, I think, for a player that's not a starting player, is all these guys were starting players before they came here. So they're used to be starters, they're used to having an important role, and now all of a sudden they're a backup player, and you're trying to get them to practice and prepare just like they're a starting player. And that's very, very difficult for a lot of players to do because they've never had that experience before. So it's a different behavior entirely, for them. And then they get in a game, and they didn't prepare the way they should have, and bad things happen, and they don't play very well, and they all of a sudden see that, hey, I got to get ready for when I do get an opportunity, I'm going to be ready to go out there and take advantage of it and play well, because every time you play, that's your resume. That's your resume. People see you. They make character judgments on whatever your number is. Number 6 did this, did that, played hard, played with toughness. Man, was that guy good on this? Or they say, this guy wasn't so good because of what he did. So I don't think sometimes the players see the big picture. You don't always get what you want, but you almost always get what you deserve. So if you didn't prepare the right way and you didn't do things the right way, then you're not going to get what you want probably. But it does offer an opportunity for every guy to learn and say, well, I need to practice better. I need to get prepared better. So when I do get a chance, I'm going to play better. So I think that experience is invaluable as well as the plays that they play in the game.
Coach, our next phone call is on the Academy Sports and Outdoors hotline, and it's from a city that you visit a lot. I know you speak down there, and it's a very fertile recruiting area, Mobile, Alabama. Damon, welcome into the show. How are you?
All right. How you doing, Eli? How you doing? How you doing, Coach David?
Good, Damon. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing fine. Look, I want to say this first. Thank you and Miss Terry and the whole Saban family for what y'all have done since y'all came to Alabama. I'm loving this ride, man. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
I appreciate you saying that. Thank you so much.
All right. Also, I wanted to ask you about the red shirt rule. Now that they have it in place, what would you do to talk to other guys that probably want to take advantage of that rule and trying to keep them in the Alabama family, and and staying there and listening to you and taking what you tell them all the time as far as being men and getting better?
Right. Well, I think that what I said earlier about it's a definitive test about where your heart is. I don't want to mention any names, but we have two very prominent quarterbacks in the country. One decided to stay with his team, one decided to leave. I mean, I guess you could have a conversation about who created more value for themselves by what they did, and how is it going to impact their long-term future, even though they think playing is the most important thing. But people that are making decisions about your future as a football player even look at, well, what kind of teammate is this guy going to be? How does he impact the other people on his team, regardless of what his role is? Because he may not be the starting quarterback here at the Baltimore, Ravens or wherever he goes to play.
Yeah.
So if this is going to be a problem, do we really want this guy in our organization? Do we want him on our team? All right, so there's a lot of unintended consequences that those guys create for themselves that I think that they need to be able to think through. And what value can you create for yourself? Just like Jalen. To me, Jalen has made a lot of improvement as a quarterback this year, even though he's not the starter, all right, because he's got a really good coach, we got a really good offensive system, and the very thing that he needed to improve on, he has improved on dramatically, even though he's not the starter. All right, and that's going to have a lot of value for him in his future. And I think a lot of people see that. All right, so, everybody wants to play. I get that. I mean, I wanted to play when I played. That's why you work so hard so that you can play. But I think sometimes people have to have a little more patience in terms of focusing on their development. And I think it goes a little bit back to this whole entitlement thing that I was talking about before. Everybody has such a high expectation of what they're going to accomplish, and maybe sometime in an unrealistic timetable, that they, like I thought about it the other day, we've had 3 or 4 guys that would be playing for us on defense right now who left the program in their freshman or sophomore year because they were disgruntled that they weren't playing. Now, at that time, they weren't better than anybody, but right now, they would be better than the guys that are playing in their place. All right, so what did they gain by leaving? Because they didn't really play any quicker someplace else than what they would have played here. Mm-hmm. All right, and then you have 3 or 4 guys that get injured and you lose them for the season, and now all of a sudden you add all those guys up, and that's why you don't have the depth that you'd like to have, in your organization. So we want to keep these players here by creating value for them and their future in terms of their development. I mean, we have guys that didn't start for us that made NFL teams.
Sure.
Right, because when they did play, they played well. And I think more and more players have to realize that. Now, when you become a graduate, I get it. If you can go someplace else and play more, and you've graduated from school, then there is some circumstances where that does benefit players, and I see that. And I think sometimes you got to support the players in that.
Before we break away, your staff has been well talked about, but a lot of folks don't know what makes a good position coach. What makes Dan Enos such a good quarterback coach?
Well, first of all, he played quarterback. He played the position. And I think sometimes when you play a position, you have a better perspective and understanding from the guys you're coaching what they see. Just like I played defensive back. So I see what guys see. I see it through their eyes because I did it. I also played quarterback, so I can see it through their eyes. I understand when my coach said you read middle of the field closed, do this, middle of the field open, you do that. Here's your movement key or whatever it is. I think that's an important factor for Dan because he has played the position and he understands from the quarterback's perspective. Secondly, he's very intelligent and has very good teaching progressions in terms of the way he presents things to the quarterback. So, the quarterback's going to catch the ball or take the ball from the center, and within 3 seconds, he got to decide what he's going to do with it. And he's got to gather a lot of information before he decides where he's going to distribute the ball. What are they playing on defense? Am I protected? Do I have to throw the ball hot? What coverage are they playing? I got to understand the route concept I got on both sides. All right, so when you can simplify these things to a movement key, all right, so that it's much simpler for the players to make good decisions, and I think Dan does a really good job of that. But I think systematically, Mike Loxley does a good job of that, and our overall system doesn't require so much of the quarterback in terms of reading and breaking things down that it's next to impossible from the time he catches the ball until he has to make a decision to throw it. The more multiples, the greater the chance you have of making mistakes. And I think when you can simplify things a little bit for these guys, it makes them a lot more effective. And I think that's one of the things that makes our offense effective is they can do that for the players.
And you're right, learning from a guy who's been there and done that, there's no substitute for that.
Tugs in time, wide open, runs across the middle. Here's to the 20, 15, breaks a tackle, 10, 5, touchdown, Alabama, 54 yards. Jalen Hurts was under pressure. He stood in, he found the wide open Henry Ruggs, and he then did the rest.
Henry Ruggs now averaging 18.5 yards per reception, 5 touchdown catches on the year. You know, Jerry Jeudy, Devontae Smith, Henry Ruggs, Jalen Waddle, the list goes on and on. I would not call it an embarrassment of riches, Jim Dunaway, because nobody is embarrassed. But, boy, that's some talent right there.
Yeah, I would imagine it's both a blessing and a burden to the quarterback to have to distribute to so many people. I would imagine they're all wanting the ball a little bit, right?
And then you got running backs like Damian Harris and Jerome Ford and Brian Robinson and Najee Harris and Josh Jacobs. We've seen Ronnie Clark, and the list goes on, and I haven't even touched on the tight ends. It's remarkable.
Yeah, the key word at SEC Media Days and on was distribution of the football. And I think I even heard Coach say that once. And that has been amazing. That's been the big takeaway of this offense throughout every game so far is how many different players have contributed from beginning to end.
Have you gotten some good comments on your talk show on the round table? Do folks call in with some good ideas sometimes, or is it mostly rehash more of the same?
No, we get some good ideas, and we get some where you don't always have great ideas. Like we got a lot of let's put Tua and Jalen out there together early on and that kind of stuff. And you know, and I say it may not be a good idea. It may be the first play out of the gate at Arkansas. Who knows? But no, a lot of great fans who always participate in the show, and they love Alabama football.
Of course, Jim hosts the WJOX Roundtable Monday through Friday from 6 until 10 in the morning. Why don't you jump in with another question for the coach?
It's my first time to do this since you opened up the Mercedes place in Birmingham. Congratulations. That's a beautiful building, by the way. And
Thank you.
I know it means a lot to your family. I keep waiting for Eli to say guest of Hey Coach gets a 1-year lease of a Mercedes. That would be really nice. But is that happening?
Not tonight.
Not tonight, okay.
Not tonight.
My question.
Well, look, you know, we are really proud of the facility that we had. I mean,
Right.
we wanted to build the best facility in the country, and there's a lot of people at Mercedes that, you know, think this is one of the finest facilities in the country. So we try to provide great service for our people, and we try to do things as a family-owned business. And, you know, both of our dealerships, people probably don't know this, but we dedicated both of them to, you know, my dad.
Right.
Because of the service station,
Right.
which is really probably where I got any interest in cars at all, because my motivation was a kid when I was pumping gas when the GTO came in, or the O's 442, and some of the old timers here might remember some of these cars. And, you know, even, you know, we saw a Mercedes convertible, you know, like 35 years, 40 years ago. And, you know, that's where a lot of my motivation came from, man. I said, I want to have a car like that someday. So that's why I worked hard, and my dad certainly provided all that in that old service station that we had. So we dedicated both those buildings to him and the old service station.
Cool. It's an amazing story, and I appreciate that. When a guy like Damian Harris comes to you and says, I'm not going to go to the NFL. I want to come back, and I want to contribute as a leader another year to your program. What Jalen did, and people like that, when they give of themselves for the program, what does that mean to you? Take me back to that conversation when Damian came in and said, Coach, I'm signing up one more year.
Well, I think that, we try to help the players make business decisions about what they do with their future. And some players buy into it, other players, really don't. But I think that, I've always had the philosophy that if you're going to be a first-round draft pick, you should go out for the draft. But if you're not going to be, you should come back to school and try to continue to develop in college and try to become one. Because the money in the NFL draft goes down very quickly. Maybe from $25 million, the first guy picked, to $10 million, the last guy picked in the first round. I mean, that's significant, and it keeps going down significantly from there. So if you have the opportunity to be a second or third round draft pick, and maybe you make $5 million, and you can come back to school and be the 15th guy picked in the draft and make, $18 million and graduate from school.
Right.
You've created a lot of value for yourself, and most of that is guaranteed money. And the thing that players don't understand is when you get drafted in the third round, fourth round, your money's not guaranteed. You have to make the team. There's very little guaranteed. When you get drafted in the first round, the whole thing is guaranteed. So whether you're any good or not, whether you can play or not, you're going to get paid all that money. So, and your security and your development comes from once they give you a signing bonus, they're not going to cut you because to the owner, he just gave you that money in advance. So if you have a $10 million signing bonus for a 5-year contract, he's just thinking, I gave you $2 million a year in advance for 5 years. So you're not getting cut for 5 years.
Yeah.
I went through that with Art Modell when I was at the Cleveland Browns. We gave a defensive back $1 million a sign. He said, is he worth this? I mean, this was way back in the day when $1 million was a lot of money. I said, Art, none of them are worth it. I didn't create the market. I'm just telling you the guy'd start at right corner if we sign him. So we signed him 2 years, $1 million. That's $500,000 a year in his mind.
Sure.
So Bill wanted to cut him after the first year, and Art says, I got $500,000 in this guy. I mean, that was a big old, we had a big.
The guy should have given you a cut of his bonus after that.
So, but we did cut him.
Coach, a visitor here at Baumhauer's Victory Grill. Good evening, sir.
Good. Hi, Coach. How you doing?
I'm doing great.
So my question is, with Chad Morris taking over at Arkansas, what differences do you see in the offense approach this year versus teams in the past?
Well, Arkansas is very different offensively than what they've been in the past. I mean, they used to be a little bit of a, Wisconsin is where their coach, came from originally, which is a lot of two-back runs, a little bit more old-fashioned in terms of the way they play power football, which is, really good in this day and age because not very many people do that. And, Chad Morris is he was the original offensive coordinator at Clemson who really started a lot of this stuff of fastball, RPOs, lots of stuff, and he's a part of that. So they are doing a little more of that. They're still trying to do some power stuff, and I'm sure that has something to do with the players that they have on the roster and how they can feature them. But I have a lot of respect for Chad Morris. I mean, he did a great job at SMU, and they were very productive offensively. And when he gets the right kind of players to run what he wants to run, I'm sure that and they've made a tremendous amount of improvement, and they gave A&M all they wanted last week. 24-17, had the ball at the end of the game, could have gone down in 2 minutes and tied it up and threw an interception. So this is a much better team than people think because they've made a lot of progress through the course of the year because they're buying into what the coach wants them to do.
John Chavis's defense.
That's right.
The same at LSU as it was at Tennessee, as it is now at Arkansas, or are you seeing new wrinkles?
Well, there's a lot of similarities, but there are, some new things that he does. And, and I think some of that has to do with the players that he has, too. I mean, at LSU, and he was bump and run all the time, kind of like we are. But they play a little bit more off coverage and play a little bit more quarters than what they used to in the past. But I'm sure that has something to do with the players that they have. But, man, they've made a dramatic improvement on defense as well. I mean, they've really played well the last couple of weeks. And and their defense, because they do a lot of stunning and moving and they have a lot of blitzes, can really give you problems if the players aren't really well prepared for it.
We're back right after this. Here now is a nice throw. Mac Jones finds Waddle across the middle. He'll come to the near sideline. Waddle is going to outrace everybody with 3 men chasing him. He's down to the 10 to the 5. Touchdown!
Touchdown, Alabama.
Freshman from Houston, Texas, receiving the pass from the redshirt freshman out of Jacksonville, Florida. Jalen Waddle is a fun guy to watch. He really has electrified things out on the field.
Oh, absolutely. What's coming up is my favorite part of this show every week.
What's that?
His final
Yes.
word, coach's final word. It makes me feel like I've had a chance to be in there with him on A-Day a couple of times, but the final word every week on Hey Coach excites me because I feel like I'm a player and he's talking to me.
Cool.
I didn't have that talent to be that, but it feels like that every week.
Before we get to the final word in just about a minute, Coach, I was talking about Jalen Waddle on the air the other day, and I was not really comparing him yet to Danny Amendola or Edelman or Branch, but man, a receiver like him, he makes things happen. He's a good one.
Well, he's very explosive. He's got great quickness. He can get out of the break. He can change direction, and he has very quick acceleration. You know how to change the direction, and I think that makes for great punt returners, and it makes for really good slot cover guys that are really difficult to cover. So what I've been impressed with is his maturity as a player, to be able to work hard to get better. And there's definitely a lot of things that all the players on our team can work at to improve, but he has certainly been electric with the ball in his hand so far, and hopefully we'll be able to continue to get that kind of production out of him, throughout the course of the season and his career here.
A lot of fun to watch. Coach, now it's time for Jim Dunaway's favorite part of the show. Your final word, presented each week by Mercedes-Benz. Mercedes-Benz, the best or nothing.
Well, it's kind of what, I said earlier with the players. How bad do you want it? How bad do you want to sort of keep developing into being a championship team? But, I guess for people out there, you could really look at this like, you're climbing a mountain. And, you win the first 5 games, so you're kind of going up the mountain. But the further you go up the mountain, the more treacherous it gets, the more focus you have to have, the more ability to keep pushing forward, to prepare and concentrate, even though you get a little tireder and all that, because the consequences get a lot greater. It gets a little more difficult at the top, more treacherous in terms of what can happen. And I think we're starting to reach that point in the season where I think it's really important that everybody really wants to do this, and they really got a lot of desire in terms of what they want to accomplish and what they want to do, so that you can keep on going and you can keep on pushing. And that's going to be important for our players in a game like this, because if you really want it bad enough, you're going to go do the things you need to do, prepare, and do those things well in the game so that you can play well. But I think the people who support the program have to understand how difficult it is. When you start going up that mountain and you get up there and the air gets thin and all that kind of stuff and things get treacherous, how important it is to have your support. How important it is for us to see all the people that are at Arkansas when we get off the bus. How important it is for us to fill our stadium and really, really help create a spirit for our players that help them work their way through this, because all those things are what makes it worthwhile. So knowing that it's important to other people is something that can really add to your motivation. So this is a big game for us. It's a road game in the SEC. They're all difficult, so hopefully our players are going to be ready to do their best and play their best in this game.
And Story's a talented enough quarterback. Devwad Whaley is a established running back. They've got some wide receivers who have posted some good numbers, tight ends as always. So they do have something in their arsenal.
Well, we have a tremendous amount of respect for Arkansas. I mean, I think they're playing a lot better on defense than they played earlier in the year. I mean, all you got to do is say Texas A&M's a good team.
Yeah.
Clemson barely beat them. We struggled with them. They gave us, all we wanted.
Sure.
And this team really has an opportunity, so you'd say they're as good as Texas A&M, and we got to play them on the road. So we have a tremendous amount of respect for them. But everybody that I see, it's like it's Arkansas. I mean, that's I hear from. I hate hearing it. I hate to say choke somebody, but why would you say that? I mean, just don't say that to me. Because you are reiterating the very sort of complacency that if you're saying that, then I think the players are saying that. If the players are saying that, they're relaxing. They're not pushing to get things right, to do things better, to be better than they need to be. So just don't say it. Don't write it in the paper. Just don't say it. I mean, how many different ways can I sort of without saying rat poison, all right, kind of, get that point across.
Coach, travel safely. We'll see you tomorrow night up in Arkansas.
All right, thanks.
Thanks.
Talk to you later.
Take care.
Thank you, Coach.